And we're going to get this meeting started. Before we get to the prayer portion, as a part of the prayer, I'm going to speak a few words in light of our tragedy that we had yesterday in our police department. Words fail to adequately express the shock and sadness we are suffering today over the loss of Police Sergeant Freddie Dietz. We nearly lost Sergeant Dietz to a horrific car crash a year and a half ago, only to see him rebound heroically and return to the duty that he loved before slipping away from us yesterday. It's important that Sergeant Dietz's family, both his blood relatives and those in blue, know he was loved as a genuinely kind soul, he was admired as a devoted public servant, and he was cherished as a friend and colleague. Those of you who are closest to him are and will be in our thoughts and prayers. We hope some measure of comfort can be found in the faith that Freddie Dietz is in the care and comfort of a loving God and who unfailingly gives mercy and grace. So I'd like to give a moment of silence, and then Pastor Matt Walton, would you join me up here for the prayer? Thank you.
For a prayer for us, I invite you to pray with me according to your faith tradition. Our most gracious God, we confess that today we are in desperate need of your mercy. We are in need of your comfort. We ask that the peace of your presence would be felt and would be experienced this morning for Freddie Dietz's family, that they would know your loving arms wrapped around them in the midst of the darkness of their grief. May the light and the hope of your presence be known to them. Lord, we ask the same for our police family, for those who served this community alongside of Freddie. We ask that you would give them comfort. Lord, that you would provide for them the words that they need to express their confusion and their hurt in the days ahead. Lord, we ask for healing in the hearts of those who grieve. We ask for guidance through the storm of these dark days. We ask especially that hope may direct our attention towards a future where you make all things new. As well, God, we lift up a prayer for those who are in need of family today. Lord, we believe, as Psalm 68, 5 and 6 says, you are a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows. You are God, you, God, are in your holy dwelling, and you set the lonely in families. It is our desire here in this community to live as a reflection of your great love and faithfulness to the lonely and to the cast out around us. And so today, as we commit November 17th as National Adoption Day for San Angelo, we recognize that you call us to make space in our lives for those whose lives are adrift. You call us to bring close, to create family for those who are far off. May this day be marked by the wholeness of relationships bound together, by the remaking of lives through life together, by the bonds of love that are forged in faithfulness throughout the spectrum of life. Lord, we pray these things in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You may be seated.
Today's pledge is by the twins Owen and Tate Crawford and their little brother Mason. Could I have them come up, please? Now, who's Owen and who's Tate? You Owen? Nice to meet you. All right, we're going to start off with the American flag.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Amen. to go, guys.
Start the proclamations off with the National Adoption Day. All children deserve a safe place to live and grow, and each year many Texas children find a forever home thanks to adoptive families. In Tom Green County, 281 children are currently in foster care, and 53 of these children are awaiting their forever home, family to bring them home. For the past 17 years during the month of November, communities across the country have come together in observance of National Adoption Day to complete the adoptions of children in foster care and to celebrate the families who choose to adopt. This year, the city of San Angelo will hold its 9th annual National Adoption Day in support of those adoptive families here in our own community and to thank them for opening their hearts to a child in need of loving and permanent home. Therefore, I, Lane Carter, Mayor Pro Tem of City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, I do hereby proclaim November 17th, 2017 as National Adoption Day, and call all citizens to remember on the month of November the children and families who have joined their families through the miracle of adoption, to open their hearts and minds to the idea of opening of their homes and to these children in need, and congratulate the new families to be formed on November 17th, 2017 during Tom Green County's Adoption Day ceremony. Ashley Crawford, and family.
I didn't know I was going to be speaking today, but we're just super excited to be a part of National Adoption Month. As you can see, adoption is something that is near and dear to our hearts. We've learned through this journey that it's something that is not talked about enough in our communities on the state level or even on the federal level. So for us, our goal in life is to bring awareness to the foster care system and adoption in hopes that this month, there are many children that find their forever homes. So, thank you guys.
Lane, have them all come up.
My name is John Scotty. I'm the adoption supervisor here in Tom Green County. I just wanted to say a few words. I wanted to say thank you to Teresa for helping us organize this and all of her work in getting things done. I know that I want to say thank you to Ashley for your continued advocacy. CPS is often the face of child protection, but the truth is we do this in partnership with many people in our community. I know that I saw representatives from our local child placing agencies here this morning. I saw some folks from Children's Hope. I also know that CASA is here in support today. In Southland Southland Baptist Church is where we're hosting National Adoption Day, and their pastor was gracious enough to lead us in prayer this morning. So thank you to all those folks. I know that November marks our recruitment campaign. Is there room in your inn? So if everyone will keep an eye out for our greeting card at the Christmas lights, we'd appreciate it. The truth of the matter is we're always looking for more foster homes. We do not have enough in our community, and if there's a calling that you find that you're interested in becoming a foster home, we're certainly happy to talk to you about that. But if your circumstances don't allow you to be a foster home, there are certainly other ways to become involved. I know that CASA is always looking for volunteers. The child placing agencies here are always looking for folks to sponsor a child, especially during this time of year for Christmas. Or there's even opportunities to open up your home to be a respite provider to give foster parents the opportunity to have a date night or something like that. So these are our kids, and the more that we involve our community and the more that we bring awareness to foster children, the better outcomes we'll have for our children and the better off they will be. Thank you.
Could I have Jennifer Price join me up here? 2017 marks the 50th anniversary of St. Christopher's Hospice, London, which recognized as the first modern-day hospice organization, and the 35th anniversary of the Medicare hospice benefit in the United States. The hospice and palliative care philosophy places the needs of the individual at the center of care, allowing patients and family caregivers to focus on quality of life, surrounded and supported by family and loved ones, despite serious and life-limiting illness. Hospice and palliative care offer those they serve the high quality of care delivered in an interdisciplinary team of skilled professionals and trained volunteers that includes physicians, nurses, social workers, therapists, counselors, health aides, spiritual care providers, and more. Every year, an estimated 1.6 million Americans living with life-limiting illness and their families receive care from the nation's hospice programs and communities throughout the United States. Hospice and palliative care providers encourage all people to learn more about options of care and to share their wishes with family, loved ones, and their healthcare professionals. Therefore, I, Lane Carter, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2017 as National Hospice and Palliative Care Month and encourage citizens to increase their understanding and awareness of care at the end of life and to observe this month with appropriate activities and programs. Well, if y'all haven't figured out yet, Brenda's not here today, so she is doing some hard work for us for the I-14 initiative in Louisiana. So now we will be going into the public comment portion of our agenda. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that discussed item may be placed on future agenda. Council takes public comment on regular agenda items during the discussion of those times. Anybody? Okay. Welcome.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Alex Vega. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. Today I'm with Vega Washer Pitching, and our organization has been hosting washer pitching tournaments for the past 14 years all across Texas. And each year we always host 2 large tournaments throughout the year. One tournament is during Memorial Day weekend in Hearne, Texas. And our second largest tournament that we host is part of the San Angelo River Fest here in Angelo. At our tournaments, that we host here in San Angelo is the West Texas State Championship Washer Pitching Tournament. And this tournament that we host here in San Angelo brings in several competitors from all across the state, including out of state, to be the state champion washer pitchers. And at each of our tournaments that we host for the past 14 years, we always give a portion of our proceeds to a nonprofit organization, either be Boys and Girls Club, scholarship funds, or military families. And this year, as part of the 5th annual San Angelo Riverfest and the West Texas State Washer Pitching Tournament, we're giving a portion of our proceeds to the Adaptive League of San Angelo. So we were fortunate to raise money at the tournament here this year, and we'll be giving a check to the Adaptive League, of course, which is a Challengers League that is supported here locally. So it's been a privilege to work with Carl and Brent over the past several years, and to keep some of the money local here has been a humongous a blessing for not only for our organization, but for San Angelo as well. So just here to present a check to the Adaptive League of San Angelo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vega. Anyone else? I'll bring public comment to a close if no one else has any public comment to come forward. And going into the consent agenda, I'm going to start with Miss Billy. Would you like to pull any items or any comment?
No, I don't have anything to pull.
I don't have anything to pull, but I do have a comment, and I want to say that there is nothing more precious than to hear those children recite the Pledge of Allegiance. It just gives you a chill when they hear those little voices. And I know they've left, but thank you so much for coming.
Harry.
Nothing to pull.
Nothing to pull.
No, sir.
I would like to pull item D. Do I have a motion to approve the rest?
Motion to approve all items with the exception of item D.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0. Roland Pena.
Roland has grown some since the last time we saw him.
Roland.
Which direction?
Yeah. Excuse me. Roland
Morning.
Pena's on I-14.
I-14,
He's
yes.
okay.
I'm Bob Schneeman with
Bob
the city's
Schneeman.
Economic Development Department. As you said, Roland is also on the I-14 trip today, so I'll be filling in for him.
Thank you.
Was there a specific question?
I would like to know on the budget of the $578,088, what all that entails, how much staffing, how much is that going towards Costa DC's work that y'all do?
That number includes all of the economic development staff. There are 4 of us, Roland, myself, Nora Navarez, and Shannon Scott. It also includes budget numbers for example, the city attorney's office, finance. Both of those offices spend a lot of time on Costa DC matters. Some from even the city manager's office for the time that they have to spend on this.
Has there been an increase from last year's budget?
I'm sorry.
An increase from last year's budget? At the 578?
A slight increase, yeah.
Salaries?
As salaries increase or new people have been added to, I think there was a new position this past year, so of course an increase for that. The numbers that are included in that contract for things like city attorney's office, finance, HR, those kinds of things are based on an indirect cost plan, which is a study that we conduct every year. And the consultant meets with all of the city departments, determines how much time is spent working for Costa DC, and it's allocated based on that.
Okay. Gotcha. Any other questions from council?
Nope.
Thank you. And I will move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
6-0. Moving on to regular agenda. Item A.
Lane, I would ask that we move item E up to the front of the agenda.
Okay.
This is an ordinance that Chief Carter is proposing that will reinstate bilingual pay that was lost during the meet and confer negotiations, and in an effort to allow him to spend time in his department today, we'd ask that you approve that item on first reading without any kind of discussion or presentation, and we'll bring it back to you on the regular agenda at the next meeting so that you can hear a full presentation and have a full discussion on it.
We'll move item B up. Consider ratifying
Item E.
sorry.
E is an egg.
E. First reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration and Personnel, Article 2.08, Classified Service, Section 2.08.017, Bilingual Spanish Certification Pay by Frank Carter.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0.
Also, the group that was going to be presenting for item A are not here yet. They were
Okay.
presenting at the Commissioners Court this morning, so as soon as they're here, I'll make you aware.
Okay. We'll Go ahead and we'll skip A until the Roman group are here, and then we will go to item B on the regular agenda. Consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of a resolution for a project and the expenditure of promotional campaign to promote 2018 San Angelo Business Plan competition for the purpose of developing viable business plans that will create new ventures and expand existing businesses, enterprises, and authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute in the amount up to and not to exceed $5,000 with McLaughlin Advertising.
And I'm not Mr. Pena either. My name is Shannon Scott, and I'm the Economic Development Specialist for the city. As Mr. Carter stated, this item is in reference to approving an expenditure not to exceed $5,000 for a promotional campaign that will promote and create interest in applying for the 2018 business plan competition. I just wanted to give a little bit of background. The business plan competition is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to develop viable business plans that will create new ventures or expand existing businesses in San Angelo. The competition consists of a three-phase business plan with cash and in-kind prizes donated by local businesses. A judging panel will be assembled from a pool of successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, financial professionals, and other economic development supporters in San Angelo. The competition coordinators are COSA DC, the ASU Small Business Development Center, and the ASU Business College of Business. This agreement will be with McLaughlin Advertising, who we've used for the past 2 years. The official kickoff for the 2018 competition will be announced November 15th at the monthly COSA DC board meeting. I do have Dave Erickson here with the ASU Small Business Development Center. If there are any further questions, he and I would both be happy to answer those.
Any questions from council?
I guess comment, Shannon, the last couple of years, this has been very, very successful. I think in conversation with Dave, sometime in the last 4 or 5 months, he's indicated that these people have gone on to have a very successful business, the winners of these competitions.
Yes, thank you, Council. And again, my name is Dave Erickson, Director of the Small Business Development Center. And also with us today is one of our judges of the judging panel, Jamie Rainey, is here as well. And it's such a successful win-win-win for all involved, especially the small business owners who are contestants in the competition. Whether they win or not, they have a tremendous value in the process. And many of them, I'm sure, and we know, have gone on to expand their businesses or start their businesses. So we're very thankful for the support of the community, the city, and of course the partnership that we have as coordinators, the COSA DC, the Business Factory, ASU College of Business, and of course us as a Small Business Development Center. The student component is very integral and very important in the process. Gives the College of Business students some real experiences, kind of the laboratory for business, so to speak, and they get a lot of value out of that. So we appreciate them being able to come in and work under the SBDC advisors and helping these folks with the business plan. I did want to just add one thing about the in-kind prizes. That's a tremendous benefit to those who win. And depending on their business, depends on what in-kind prize they access. But for the $5,000 that Steve McLaughlin charges, many more thousands of dollars are provided through in-kind prizes that he helps solicit, that he gets for, especially in the media. And so there's a real value added to that as well. So to answer your question,
Thank you all.
Way beyond that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Third, fourth. Call for public comment. If no public comment, then I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 6-0. Thank y'all. Item C, consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of a resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in the sum not to exceed $168,000 in support of establishing a construction trades program at Howard College to be partially funded under the Texas Workforce Commission High Demand Skills Development Grant. Scott.
Thank you. So recently, there has been a recognition from Howard College, the Texas Workforce Commission, and the San Angelo Home Builders Association that we have a critical need for a training program that covers the construction trades. There's a major shortage in this area due to the aging workforce and low replacement numbers. Locally to date, we've had $500,000 that has been raised by private funding, the Home Builders Association of San Angelo, local businesses, and the Health Foundation. Currently, Costa DC, Howard College, and the Concho Valley Workforce Development Board are in the process of applying for a high-demand skills development grant, similar to that was received for the LVN to RN program with Howard College. This funding will provide matching funds required in the amount of a little under $168,000 from Costa DC and will allow Costa DC to move forward with an agreement with Howard College. These funds will also be used for the construction of the needed facilities to house the program at Howard College that will be completed in 3 phases. Phase 1 will introduce, train, and promote the general skills to complete a house, and phases 2 and 3 will kick off in 2018 and 2019. Those will add welding and craftsman building components. $100,000 has also been raised by the Concho Valley Workforce Development Board, which will be included with this match with Costa DC. These combined funds are critical from Costa DC and the Concho Valley Workforce Development Board to finalize the funds needed to buy equipment, hire instructors, and launch the program at Howard College. I do have Jamie Rainey also here from Howard College. If she would like to come up and help answer any questions, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey.
Just real quick, Jamie, you and I talked before the meeting started about this need and how it's been exponentially impacted by the hurricanes down in South Texas, Southeast Texas, and how a lot of people that were working in the San Angelo area now have gone down there to work. So I applaud everybody involved in this. This is going to be a very, very successful endeavor, and I certainly appreciate Howard College having it on their particular campus.
Thank you so much. It's been a great partnership with the Home Builders Association, with the Texas Builders Association. Mike Biggerstaff is the chairman of our committee. That was the exploration committee at Howard College to see what would it take to create construction trades at Howard College. He has been an amazing person also as their lead fundraiser. He has solicited funds for materials, for supplies, for labor. So all of this building is coming together without any debt caused for Howard College, which is amazing, and we're so grateful for that. We're grateful that you're considering this request today because our funding it comes really in 3 ways. It really comes with student tuition and fees, which comes after a program is already built. It comes with contact hour funding from the state, which really comes way after this program starts. We have a funding year every other year, so it starts the 1st of March and it goes through the end of February the following year. And that time period, whatever contact hours that we receive during that time period, that actually sets this funding for the next 2 years. So we'll actually start a new funding year this coming March. We hope this program is up and running by the middle of March, and that will start getting those contact hours those classroom hours into the funding stream. But it'll be the following year. So anytime we start a brand new program, we're looking for those 2 funds, but we look for grant monies and donations up front to help us start a program. So that's why these dollars are critical, and we really appreciate your consideration. And we're excited because we think there's a huge opportunity to add even more dual credit students to the program as well as adult learners. So we're really looking forward to the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And I would just like to say to Costa DC and to the administration at Howard College for the tremendous work you do in our area. I was saying to somebody this morning that San Angelo is the greatest place on earth to live. And this kind of effort and vision in making educational opportunities, for San Angeloans, I think is fantastic. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. And, with those comments, I would make a motion that we approve this item.
Second.
And I'm very excited with being in construction and seeing how hard it is to find good tradesmen out there right now. And I think I remember from Stephen McLaughlin saying that the median, the average age on a job site was 54 years old.
I think it's older than that, Lane.
Is it?
I think it's older. I do think it's older than that. Yeah, it's.
This is going to be a tremendous
60.
help to getting our students. Now, is this dual credit with Central and Lakeview?
Well, actually, we have dual credit right now with Central, and there is a construction trades program on our campus, but it's full, so there's no more space. So this will allow us to get students from the surrounding schools, and even our adjacent small town schools. It'll allow those students to be able to take this program. So it opens up a whole new venue for them, and we're within driving distance, so that's perfect.
Okay.
So it will allow us to take additional dual credit students, where right now we're full.
Okay, very good. We've got a motion by Billy and a second by Harry. Any public comment? And I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all. We have the Roman group here, so I'm going to skip back to item A, the regular agenda. Consider a resolution acknowledging the immediate need of an additional skilled nursing facility, nursing home, to be constructed in Tom Green County, Texas. Presentation by representatives of the Roman group.
How are y'all doing this morning?
Very good. How are you?
Thank you. Sorry about being late. We were over at the county doing the same thing. I want to, again, I acknowledged him this morning. I want to thank Michael Looney for getting all this set up with you guys, and for you guys being accommodating to us and getting us on the agenda and moving us around. So,
could I get you to state your name for the record,
Oh,
please?
I'm sorry. Jeff Rhodes.
Jeff Rhodes.
I'm Jeff Rhodes with the Roman Group. But
for being
thank you
here,
guys
Jeff.
for getting us here. For the purposes of expediting everything, I will go through this relatively quick, share some information about what we're trying to do, and then you guys can ask questions, obviously. It's interesting that we came in on the tail end of that presentation, you guys being focused on working with students and your younger population. We're on the other end of that. It's impressive. I've been impressed with the city, the county, being here. This is my second trip out here. Won't be my last. Ready to bring my wife out here. You got an incredible city. Thank you. She'll spend some money here, so that's good. You guys appreciate that, right?
Yes.
Anyway,
Very
we'll get
much.
started. If we can go on to the, do I use this? I can move it through. Excellent.
There you go.
Again, I'm Jeff Rhodes with the Roman Group, and I'm going to explain a little bit about what I do. I'm a consultant. I work with nursing home providers, builders, the equity partners. I work with nationwide entities, local, regional entities. I work with a lot of people to build new nursing facilities. I also buy and sell and acquisitions and mergers and things like that in the nursing home industry. So I work as a consultant. My business partner and I have been doing this for a combined a little over 25 years. In the last 3 to 5 years, we have secured roughly 10,000 nursing home beds in 5 different states, resulting in the building of, I think around, at this point, about 80 nursing homes. So we've done this a lot. I've worked with a lot of people, and I've worked with a lot of providers. So I kind of wanted to state that so you guys know where I'm coming from. I'm going to skip that. What I do want to do is I want to introduce Ray Watt and Steve Robinson. These are the owners of RW Senior Housing Development. These are the very unique situation for what we're wanting to do here in San Angelo. These are the builders or the construction contracting entity. They are the owners, the operators. They're a one-stop shop, okay? That's pretty unique in the industry in Tennessee to do the full gamut of everything. These guys are licensed in how many states? I think 5 different states combined to operate nursing homes. These guys are incredibly experienced. I don't know how many buildings they've been a part of constructing in Texas alone, several with different entities. So this is not their first dog and pony show either. They've been down this road. What's great about these guys is they have a facility right down the road in Campwood. And so they're local guys. They understand the culture. They understand the needs. They understand what's going on in the business and the regulatory environment. But mostly what senior citizens need and expect in long-term care today. You know, with over 40 years of experience, it makes a big difference. They care about what they do. They care about the patients. You know, it's not a number in a bed. It's a person that they're caring for, and that's a big deal. As far as why Tom Green County, I wanted to maybe make some clarity about this. You guys know your county, you know your city, you know the growth trends, you know what's going on, but we look for some key points when we're looking at an opportunity to develop such a specific business to service a very specific clientele and demographic within a community. This is your growth trend there. Obviously, if it was the other way, we probably wouldn't be talking. Let's see here. There's another look at it compared to the state and the United States. There's the city of San Angelo from 2000 to 2015. Something significant, you know, your city is growing. There are areas of the state that are growing faster, obviously. We don't really look at the growth rate. We want to be in a community that's not going the other direction. But these guys are looking for emerging markets that we feel are going to be coming on strong. And from everything that I've been told from your economic development, from the Chamber of Commerce, you guys have some really good things going your way. And it's impressive to look at. We want to be a part of that landscape, obviously, okay? And healthcare is a huge component of that because of the quality of life that it offers. So here, probably the biggest, I think the next, right here, by 2020, your 65 and over demographic is going to make up 17% of your community. When you look at that on a scale, the state of Texas is 13%. Percentage-wise, you have a very large population of 65 and older. Obviously significant for our business. You actually have one of the largest concentration of senior citizens in the state of Texas. And what comes, you know, there are certain expectations of the baby boomer generation. These are people that have traveled, they've, you know, gone places, they've lived a lifestyle that they appreciate things in life, and they expect more out of their health care. There was a time when nursing homes were very sterile. They were built on the backside of neighborhoods and communities because people were more embarrassed of them. They were very institutional. That is changing. You guys have 8 nursing homes, and I think the next slide may talk about this. Yeah, you have 8 facilities in this community, nursing homes. Now, we're not talking about assisted living and independent living. We're talking about specific skilled nursing facilities. These facilities have 685 certified beds in them, and the current occupancy and the trending occupancy is about 81%. Now, I get asked about 81%, well, what's the 19% that's empty? You know, why is there a need? And I'll explain that. There's a lot of ways to explain that, but I'll explain it this way. We've talked to providers within the community. There are waiting lists at some of the nursing homes. And the reason this is a lot of these nursing homes have double occupancy rooms, where you have 2 beds in a room, but people don't like for their loved one to share a room. So they'll pay a little bit more. They'll do what it takes to not have to share a room. Well, that bed is still licensed, but it's unoccupied, the extra bed. That's where a lot of the occupancy discrepancy happens. Also, a lot of nursing homes, and I don't know that that's happened here, but a lot of nursing homes in Texas will utilize rooms that have dual occupancy beds. They'll convert them to storage. They will convert them to office space, but the beds are still licensed, okay? And that's just an ongoing kind of saga in the state of Texas. So when you have 81% occupancy, you're full. All right, we deem a community pretty doggone full, and then when you do anecdotal calling and looking, you realize there's waiting lists. In the past 2 years, the bed occupancy demand has increased 4%. That's in 2 years. That's significant. So if that trend continues, which we would expect it to, and all projections are saying it will, by 2020, which is, you know, less than 3 years down the road, you're going to have 85% occupancy. 85% occupancy is the threshold to be considered a high occupancy county in the state of Texas. That's significant. Well, what we try to do is we try to get ahead of that curve, okay? If you wait till you're full, then you're out of space. It can take up to 4 years to get a nursing home built because of the regulatory and everything that it takes. So if you have to get ahead of the curve, and the state understands that. So this is a lot of mumbo jumbo. This basically tells what we have to do. We had to submit a health needs study to the state. And then the second thing we have to do is we have to get what's called substantial community support. It's very ambiguous in the rules. That's why we come to meetings like this, okay? We need support from the local community. And really what that support is saying we recognize that there's a need for a new nursing home, okay? So we've already gone through these steps. We're here today asking for your support. I'm going to go through some of these. These are some examples of facilities that I've been a part of constructing. This goes to show you kind of the landscape of today of the way nursing homes are going. I've not been in any of the facilities in your local community. I know you've got a couple of very nice facilities. One of the big things, we're not here to knock any other facility that's already here. I like to make that known. The quality of care being offered in your community is actually good. You don't have a lot of regulatory issues, nothing off the radar that's abnormal. But what we're going to bring is going to be incredibly nice. I mean, it's going to be, something that's going to have a home-like feel to it. And so these are just some of the examples of things that you can look at. This building will probably house around 100 residents. It depends on what we get approved for. Approximately 48,000 square foot building. I'm usually looking at around 7 acres of land for a footprint. Total development estimate around $10 million. That's land and all. And again, these are obviously estimates at this point. A lot of things go into those factors. This is an example of a typical building being built in the state of Texas. I know I've been involved in about 4 different floor plans. This is the most common. This is called a K plan. I know there are at least 2 or 3 buildings in your community that are built somewhat like this. Very common throughout the country, really. Benefits to your community. To me, the biggest benefit, when you bring in a nursing home, it's a very quiet business. The loudest thing that happens in a given week is a Cisco truck dropping off food. It's not a lot of traffic volume. It's a quiet business, employs anywhere from 100 to 120 full-time equivalency jobs. I think I've got a few details on pay grades. Yeah, about $8.50, anywhere from $8.50 an hour to $58 an hour, depending on level of skill. Many pay grades in between there. And what's interesting, I know you guys have an LVN to RN program local. We're talking with those guys. A lot of people interested in this project. The need is the biggest component for us. We don't come into a community as a consultant. I don't consult my clients into an area where it's not needed. And then my clients, they're not going to look at an area where a nursing home isn't needed. So the threshold of need is what we're really looking at. And we've basically determined that there is an immediate need, okay? Outside of that, there's a lot of things I could talk about, but do you guys have any questions at this point?
Are y'all looking at employing more LVN or RN employees? LVN? Okay.
These are the providers. I'm not a provider, so.
Okay. Would y'all like to come up and speak?
Just a real quick comment for Jeff, since he's still standing up here. As somebody that's closer to that stage in life than some of these other people that are sitting up here.
A lot closer, Harry.
I certainly appreciate the fact is that the need is out there, and so I'll certainly support it.
What is I'm just curious, what is the need for a resolution? What does that do for you all, for the city?
I'll speak to that. The state requires that we show that a community supports the fact that there is a need of a nursing home. Did I say that clearly? Mm-hmm. In other words, you're not necessarily supporting us as a business. You're supporting the idea that there's a need for a nursing home. The state just wants to make sure you guys don't want us here. mean, if you guys don't want us here, then the state wants to say, okay, well, you can't build a nursing home there. So it's incumbent upon us to show you that, number one, there's a need. Number two, we're not going to come in here and neglect people and cause problems and neglect your community. So that's what this is about. The resolution is just simply telling the state, hey, we support a nursing home project.
Is that something that occurs every time a nursing home is built? They come to us, because this is a first for me, they come to us seeking a resolution before they build a nursing home?
Just as a matter of course, since I've been sitting up here, not necessarily a nursing home, but when you're looking at tax credits for affordable housing that we've approved since I've been on this council, the support needs to come from this particular group of people.
Okay.
And that's a similar process. Different situation, but a similar process.
Mr. Rhodes, you mentioned that you had been meeting with different groups in the community. Have you met with any of the current nursing home groups?
No, we have spoken with, or we've had conversations with some of the assisted living facilities. We don't go to the existing nursing homes because we're competition.
Okay, so they would probably not be supportive of you coming into San Angelo possibly, or?
They always have an opportunity with the state to make comments about our application.
Okay, thanks.
That's part of the whole process.
Lucy had a question.
I have a question. You said we have 8 nursing homes. When was the last one built? Are you aware of that?
I just thought about that. I'm not 100% sure. I know it's been within the last 10 years. I do know that.
I believe it might be the one out by Bentwood.
Senior care?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
That looks fairly new.
Yeah.
Well, I've been worked in healthcare. I'll definitely be supportive and know that there is a need, so I will support this.
I'm supportive for Harry.
I just need some support on this side, all right? I need a little help on this side of the bench.
Well, they'll have a room reserved for you.
I move approval of this item for Harry's benefit.
Second.
Any public comment? If none, then I will go ahead and call for the vote. All in. Any more? Oh. All in favor for approving this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
Do you guys have the resolution?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get it to you as quick as possible.
Item D, consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of a resolution in the amount of $1,500,000 authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds for the expansion of the training mission of Goodfellow Air Force Base and authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute an MOU with Tom Green County and Goodfellow Air Force Base on behalf of the corporation and such other legal documents necessary for the project. Mr. Schneeman.
Thank you. Bob Schneeman again from Economic Development. This is a project that the COSA DC board approved on August 23rd, and they've approved up to $1.5 million for an expansion project at Goodfellow Air Force Base under what is called the Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant Program. We did one of these last year, and I believe COSA DC's contribution was about $740,000 or $760,000, and we wound up with about a $2.2 million grant that expanded some foreign student training facilities. This particular resolution is for local matching funds, and it's a requirement under the grant that we have about a 25% local match. Tom Green County will be the fiscal agent on this, so there will be an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between COSA DC, the county, and Goodfellow Air Force Base. And that, again, is something that's required by the grant rules that it be administered by the county. And it's for an expansion of Goodfellow's intelligence training. There'll be, and it's for the highly classified intelligence training, I might add. The renovation will be approximately 24,000 square feet in 2 existing facilities. for, as I said, highly classified classrooms, space for instructors, and a psychologist, who I know personally, but that's another story, and increased dining seating for about 150 people. Total cost of the project is $8.8 million, and it will increase the potential for new military missions at Goodfellow. It results in additional active duty and civilian jobs. Obviously, it's a positive impact on the local economy, as all of Goodfellow is, and it's a project that is authorized under Section 501.104 of the Local Government Code, governing the use of half-cent sales tax, specifically for expanded missions of existing bases and for the prevention of potential closure of existing military installations. Mike Boyd from the Chamber is also here to speak. If you'd like to ask him any questions, he's a lot more familiar with the program than I am.
Mr. Boyd.
I guess, Mike, one of the questions.
Mike Boyd. How are y'all? I'm not that tall. 4.55 million is what they're asking from the state. That will be approved on November the 17th. We've got $2 million worth of federal funding. The $1.5 million is very important. We talked about new missions coming. They're coming. The additional thing that we found out in Washington last week is that I call it the cyber training / security training. That's for DHS, Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and then some of our local state agencies. Looks like we're going to be the first regional site. There's only one site in the U.S., and that's in Virginia. And we've asked to have that first regional site here, and we got verbal approval on that. We need these classrooms. They're classified secret, and that will bring people here for a week at a time throughout the entire year. So I ask for your support in approving the 1.5 recommended and approved by COSA DC. Questions?
Just real quick, Mike. Do we have any kind of estimation at what the economic impact to San Angelo and the surrounding area is going to be with these missions coming?
I do not. Bob may have that. I know from full-time personnel on the 3 missions that we're working on now, we're talking about probably 27 full-time personnel. One group of students would be 75, another group of students would be 125, and if we get the third one that's coming from Bill Air Force Base in Florida, it'd be about 110, and those revolve. So that's every class that comes in. So it should push us to about 14,000 students a year, so nearly 1,000 increase per year. I can give you numbers, but I don't know about dollars, Harry.
I can't necessarily give you dollars either, but according to the grant application, direct jobs will be 9 new jobs created. Those will be teaching jobs. But what it will do is it'll increase the number of students and workers trained by about 150 average daily, 270 annually. The number of jobs retained would be 5,009 daily with 19,409 indirect jobs on an annual basis.
Just as a numbers guy, I thought maybe that number may be out there. It would be interesting for the citizens to know that for an investment of $1.5 million of their tax money, we're going to get this type of return back on it. So if that number is available someplace at some time in the future, certainly would be nice to know.
I believe we do have an economic impact analysis on the project. I just didn't bring it with me, but we can get that information to you.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
I'd like to say we all know how vital Goodfellow is to San Angelo and how vital their operations are in our world today, especially in light of what's going on in our Pacific. So highly supportive of this. Let's get some more training in there and keep Goodfellow on the map as one of the high dogs. So we have a motion and a second. Any public comment? If none, then I will call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 6-0. Thank you. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Item F, update on recent activity in the Animal Shelter Division, Services Division. Assistant Director, Neighborhood and Family Services, Morgan Chigwetton.
Good morning.
Morning, Morgan.
Lord. I have some stats and updates here before y'all. for what's been going on in the Animal Services Division lately. I've had the opportunity to have tours with a couple of y'all coming out to the facility, and I know that there's a lot of dialogue going on behind the scenes, so I wanted that opportunity, and I'm grateful for that opportunity to come and kind of speak to that as a group, as well as for the public to have this feedback for what's going on at the shelter. Excuse me. So I wanted to start with kind of where we are, right? So our fiscal year 17 figures of how we ended the year, what our volume looked like, what kind of things we were working through. First of all, as we continue to state and fight the line on this, there were 0 adoptable pets euthanized. That, of course, is our first full year in the No-Kill initiative. We adopted it in partial year of fiscal year 16. So for fiscal year 17 was the first full year that we were in that No-Kill initiative, whereby we would only consider euthanizing if a pet was injured, ill, aggressive, or feral. Sorry, y'all. I did want to mention that maintaining that no-kill initiative is a daily battle. It is something that we invest in every minute of every day. It is something that is, thank you, fighting allergies, so I appreciate that. An initiative of this magnitude often is corresponded with a tremendous investment or additional staffing or whatever it may be. But at the City of San Angelo, of course, we're doing it on a shoestring budget. We're doing it with whatever we can. We thought we could do it within the current budget, and we have been. So it's important to state that we are in this no-kill initiative. We are maintaining that. But as opportunities come up to talk about adding funds or adding people, this is something that to maintain for any amount of time would require some kind of investment. I would want to make sure and note that. Our facility, our staffing, our budget has stayed the same while we added this additional component. Moving on, we also had 277 citizens using our microchip clinic. I think that's kind of an unsung hero of our programs out there, meaning that, microchip became law in 2014-ish. If you live inside the city limits, you have to microchip your pet. We have, I think, the best deal in town for $13 for the life of your pet. We will microchip anytime, Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. It is an easy, easy thing. So when I look at that we had 277 people using the microchip clinic, 114 of those were just at the Clear the Shelter event in August. So it's a very seldom used program that we have. We think that is a terrific program. If you go to your veterinarian or someone else, it may cost more. You may have an annual fee. You may be turned off from your service because you didn't pay the annual fee. So the microchip clinic, we're amping up participation, and that is really important for us as we try to reunite pets where they're going. We also, for fiscal year 17, ended the year with a 49% live release rate. And that's huge. When we took on this initiative, we were approaching maybe a 20% live release rate. We were hoping that by this time, we would be releasing live 30 to 35% of our intake, and we exceeded that goal. Almost 50% of the animals that came into our facility left alive. Either they went back to their owners, they were adopted, they were transported out to other facilities like us. And so I really want to brag on that 49% is huge in our first full year of the No-Kill initiative.
Morgan, did that lend itself to our 0 euthanization rate for 2016 and 2017 that we were able to release almost 50% live?
Yes, ma'am. And I have some breakdown here to talk about, how many of those were given back to their owner. Owner redemption is huge. Every animal that's in my facility came from somewhere, okay? Whether it was a cat that you had that bred and had kittens, then I have the kittens. Or if it's a dog that you had for a while, it got out, you didn't find it, whatever. So every pet in my home, in my facility came from somewhere. And so to the extent we can try to match that animal back to you is the number one best thing for your pet, right? We want to promote responsible pet ownership. We want to get compliant with all the city ordinances and state regulations, but at the end of the day, I cannot adopt out all these animals. So being able to have the no-kill initiative, we've got to increase our owner redemptions because adoptions can increase some, but it's a finite market, right, of how many people are in the market for an adoption, in the market for a shelter pet. And so the no-kill initiative and the 49% live release rate, of course, absolutely do go hand in hand.
Morgan, has the adoption rates increased?
It has. So To speak to that a little bit, we had 4,800 new arrivals in our facility in fiscal year 17. I just want to point out that 6 years ago when I started volunteering at the shelter, this figure regularly approached about 10,000 a year. And so we've had a huge decrease in our pets coming into the facility. And that's from a multitude of things. For example, we really cracked down in the last year or so that we are a function of the city of San Angelo. We are funded by the tax dollars for the city of San Angelo. So we only respond to calls for service inside the city limits. We only accept pets within Greene County. So that's a big change from the way things used to be done. That's we encourage folks outside of our jurisdiction to seek out those resources that they have in their area. We also, of course, in 2015 passed the law regarding feral cats. So we're not out picking up feral cats. That was thousands of animals a year that were coming in the facility that are no longer. And then when it comes to owner surrender, as folks are coming in the front door and saying, I can't keep my pet anymore, we charge a nominal fee for doing that, and we counsel them and encourage them to find resources, what seems to be the problem. We have a terrific partnership with Concho Valley Paws, which I'll also touch base on in a minute, and it's not uncommon that we refer the citizen to Concho Valley Paws for resources. They may get that pet spayed-neutered. I can't keep the pet because it gets out all the time. Well, it's an unaltered male. Would you be interested in neutering him? We want to help you with that. Or we have one case where Paws bought an electric fence for a person because the dog was a climber, was going to get out, and whatever it may be. So we try to mitigate those things as they come in. Of course, I will readily admit that we could do better at that, but to the extent that we can try to match a solution with those owner surrenders and keep them in their home, we try to do that as well. And of course, the biggest part of where our animals are going is in adoptions. We had almost 1,700 adoptions in fiscal year 17. So this was our first year in the New Kill Initiative, but it's a partial year of our partnership with Concho Valley Paws. I think in our first year of the contract with Concho Valley Paws, we'll see that our adoptions have increased from prior years when we were doing it on our own. The adoptions increased from 16 to 17 by about 100, so not a tremendous increase, but again, we only had the Concho Valley Paws agreement effective March 1st, and so that was a partial of our fiscal year 17. And then you'll see only 400 of those animals were redeemed by their owner. Some of this, of course, is wildlife and livestock. But unfortunately, we did have 2,400 animals that were euthanized, whether they were feral, injured, sick, or aggressive. I did touch on the community cat ordinance a moment ago, so I want to point out that when we're euthanizing a feral animal, it's because, in the ordinance it states that if a community cat caregiver has ear-notched or tattooed or spayed or neutered, microchipped their feral cat, we will return it to the organization of record for them to place back in its colony. So these are cats that are not that. These are cats, feral cats that are not ear-notched, are not microchipped, are not tattooed in any way. So at the end of fiscal year 17, we were left with 292 lives in the shelter. That is, when we get to about 300 animals, I start to get nervous. The state does not say you can only have 400 animals in your facility. You can only have this many animals. They don't give you a finite number. What they do say is, as long as you can meet the prescribed matter of care, that is how many animals you can keep in the facility. So I know with my staffing, with the size of my facility, when we start to get to about 300 animals, we need to hustle. We need to get moving. We need to reach out to folks for adoptions, for transports to different facilities, whatever it may be. Today, we ended yesterday with 313 lives in the facility, so we've been on the phone. We have been calling in favors. We have been doing everything. There's going to be an emergency adoption event today and tomorrow that Paws threw together. We're also scheduling a transport for next week to some of the receiving agencies, and so hopefully between that we can move 50 or so animals. It's not uncommon that we're able to do that. So that is where we are, kind of macro view for fiscal year 17. I do have some additional data on the euthanasias. we look closely at these numbers because, regrettably, 4,800 animals come in, 2,400 were euthanized, and so we try to look at, what is that? Where is that coming from? Well, almost 100 of those were wildlife, and so that's in the event that we show up on the scene and wildlife is injured beyond any kind of rehabilitation. Or any of the species that are at high risk for rabies, the officers have discretion to go ahead and euthanize those because to protect the public health. But you'll see that the vast majority of the euthanasias are cats. And furthermore on that, 900 of them were feral cats. So of the 1,600 cats we euthanized last year, the vast majority of them were feral. And unfortunately, cats in communal living do get sick. And so the remainder of those cats that were euthanized were due to illness. So of the 2,400 animals that were euthanized, just another way to break that down, 1,000 of them were because they were sick. Sick, injured, or failure to thrive. And by failure to thrive, I mean too young to be weaned from their mother, with no mother in place to take them on. And so we do occasionally have that, where a citizen brings in a litter of kittens that were born under their porch. They're 1 day old. They come into my facility. I don't have a way to match them with a nursing mother. I don't have a way to bottle feed them and keep them healthy. And so, unfortunately, we do have to consider being humane and euthanizing them in those situations. And then a very small amount are related to owner-requested euthanasia. So this would be if your family pet perhaps is ill or aggressive or elderly, and you can't afford to have it euthanized through your veterinarian, you can come do that through our facility as well. Okay, so with that, that is our fiscal year 17 performance to kind of let us know, where we are, what are the different moving parts related to that. I did want to talk about staffing in particular because that's one of the things that has taken up a big investment of my time new on the job. We have 13 authorized full-time positions, that's including myself. We also have 6 authorized part-time positions. Since I came on board on June 22nd, we've had 7 new hires. We have 2 new hires scheduled for later in November. And so we had a tremendous amount of vacancies that had been left vacant for quite some time. So, for example, we're fully staffed on animal control officers for the first time in, I think, 3 years. I think that that's huge to speak to some of the issues that y'all were hearing earlier this year. We want to make sure that our folks are fully staffed. We want to make sure that we have an appropriate on-call schedule, so we're not driving these staff, into the ground with everything that every time they turn around, they have another call out. We want them sworn in. We want them certified. We want them duly trained, all of those things. So I'm authorized 4 animal control officers, and I'll talk about that again in just a moment related to that certification and training. But for the new hires, getting the animal control officers in particular newly hired was my top priority. And beyond that, we had several vacancies that had been vacant for quite some time. We also have had some turnover. Some of those 7 are jobs that I have hired and they've resigned, and I've hired again. And so it's just the nature of the job that folks will come. They will think that the job is one thing. They discover that it's very difficult, and then they move on, and it's just a constant recruitment effort. And we find that, we're prepared for that, but it's important to note and keep on top of getting those jobs filled.
Morgan, are those 4 officers on the streets at all times, or do they cycle? How many do you have out at once?
I have 4 animal control officers and an animal control supervisor, okay? 2 of the animal control officers work their normal shift from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 2 work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then 1 animal control officer is on call for a week at a time for emergencies. Right now, my newest hire with animal control is still riding along with the supervisor, so I still have 4 active trucks rolling out on a daily basis. Just one of them is riding double with his supervisor until we can get him fully trained. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, so to speak to the training and certification, in particular related to animal services officers. So these folks are required by state law to meet a minimum standard of training. We had all 4 of our animal services officers and myself as well certified in October. So we went through a state-approved course. It was a 2-day course with an option for 1 day of continuing education. And so basically what I'm saying is none of our animal services officers were certified. when I took this position. Today, all of them are. All of them have passed the course. It's a rigorous training program. It is a graded test. It is very legal involved, and we do have that certification in place now for all of our folks. There's also a required continuing education component related to state law. It says you have to have so many hours over a certain time period. So we have had continuing education for those officers, shelter workers, supervisors, and you'll see that I don't talk about shelter workers as much when it comes to training and certifications because the state doesn't mandate that, but I do. We need to be trained in proper cleaning procedures, proper animal care procedures, and so for those folks that are working in-house on the premises, we have invested in some continuing education for them, and we're going to continue doing that as well as we have safe practices. We did have on the schedule for all of our animal control officers to be euthanasia certified in October, but the instructor had a medical issue come up, and so that's been rescheduled for later this month. And that's important so that if you're on call, you respond to a scene, there's an injured wildlife or whatever it may be, you can be humane quickly and not have to call for backup. We are constantly scrambling for who's in the house that's euthanasia certified. You know, I don't want to widely spread this because we do need to have control over who's euthanasia certified, but there are folks that it's appropriate for them to be certified in this role, and we are working to get that in place. Okay, I also wanted to touch on the public-private partnership that we have with Contra Valley Paws. Of course, this went before the council last year as an important item to free us up to focus on our core function. Just to kind of remind us what went out in that contract was that they host a high-volume adoption program. They transport dogs to other communities. So there are 7 facilities in the Midwest that were us 10 years ago. They went no-kill. They had a massive investment in spay-neuter. And today they need the inventory. They're like, do y'all have any cute adoptable puppies? And I say, yes, how many do you want? And we try to get those out. And so it's a matter of fundraising for Contra Valley Paws because some of those agencies require like a veterinarian's health certificate. And then it's a matter of volunteers of who can take those dogs and drive them. I am on vacation later this week, and I was actually scheduled to drive one of the transports to Nebraska, and unfortunately they had an issue with some Hurricane Harvey dogs that came in, and so we're kind of on pause with that. But it's not uncommon that we call them and say, I have 313 animals in the facility, can you help us out? And they say yes. We're just in a unique circumstance this week because of their situation as well. They also lead our lost and found efforts. So, for example, if an animal control officer's out in the field and they pick up a stray dog or a stray animal, whatever it may be, they scan it for microchip, they ask any neighbors, they try to relocate it back to its owner out in the field. And that has mixed results. But there's also the local lost and found website, helpmegethome.com, which I know some of y'all have used successfully. And so if we see an animal, right now, everyone on my staff that has an email address gets an email when a lost pet is posted on Help Me Get Home. I just needed as many eyes as possible on these animals. And so I might say, well, this is a gray and white dog. It looks like every other gray and white dog we have in my facility. But one of my employees might say, oh no, I know this dog. It was named this. It's from this area. I know this is the dog. And so at that point, we contact Paws and say, hey, look up through y'all's website, see if we can match this owner back. And so that is increasing our owner redemptions as we're making those contacts. They also provide medical support for sick or injured pets. So we had a dog that was running loose in a neighborhood. We got a call from a citizen. We went out and secured her. Nice, sweet dog, but she had several lacerations, several puncture wounds on her leg. We identified it as something that was easily treatable, but not something that would really heal just being in my facility. We contacted Contra Valley Paws. They reached out to some donors, and we got that dog directly into veterinary care. Didn't even come in my facility, because that's the preference, right, to prevent any infection or spread of disease or anything like that. And so she's doing really well with her injuries, and that happens, several times a month to get those kind of animals their care. They also run our on-site volunteer program, and so we were finding that when we have volunteers, we ask them if they want to clean. And some folks say, sure, but most folks say, I'd like to socialize with pets. I'd like to interview adopters. I'd like to make phone calls. I'd like to lost and found, whatever it may be. And so many of what the volunteers are wanting to do pairs quite well with what PAWS is doing. And so when we made this contract with PAWS and it came with certain staffing levels, really it's way above and beyond that, because we have dedicated volunteers that are there daily. We have dedicated volunteers that are there certain times of the month, whatever it may be. And so that is a function that they provide as well, in addition to foster homes. So, cultivating these kind of public-private partnerships, having some kind of long-term commitment to a public-private partnership such as this is a really terrific use of taxpayer dollars, as I'm limited and we're limited in our budget, and we task more and more things to an adoption agency such as this to take on and take away so we can focus on our core function. I also wanted to touch on our Animal Services Advisory Committee. We had, excuse me, of course, several resignations come up, and we've been able to place 4 appointments and or reappointments back on the board. And so that was key, because one of the things I was tasked with when I got this job was to have a complete overhaul of all our standard operating procedures. And so by law, the ASAC is the group that you vet those through. And so I write them up, I take them to Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, they weigh in on, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And so having enough folks on there so that we can convene a meeting, so that we can have a quorum, so that we can have some really valuable dialogue was really important. So being able to have those 4 appointments and reappointments, we do still have 1 vacancy that we're working on, but that was huge to be able to have that, that pool of knowledge to lean on as well. We did have a training session in October that Teresa hosted to kind of have an overview for the committee members to say, this is what state law charges you to do. This is what state law charges the shelter to do. This is where we match, y'all's expertise and your passion with our tasks and what we're working on. I have kind of a miscellaneous slide here just related to research. There's been a lot of just reading of the laws, reading of the ordinances, reaching out to those folks that are experts in the field. I've had almost bi-weekly meetings with Judge Gilbert and Deborah Womack, the municipal prosecutor, just to talk about what's happening in animal control. What are we required by state law? And when I went through the basic animal control certification course in October, I was in the class with folks that had been in the job about as long as I had, but they worked. We have a very busy facility. We have a very busy division. And so even though I had only been there about the same amount of time as other guys in my class, I had seen cruelty cases. I had seen rabies head tests. There are things that unfortunately we have to do as a facility because we're a busy community. We're a community that loves its pets. We're a community that has a pet overpopulation epidemic. And so we've kind of had to learn some of this by fire, meaning I call the judge and say, I've got this situation, what do I do? And he goes, okay, let's talk about it. And we go through step by step. This is required because of penal code. This is required because of state health code. This is required because of local ordinance. There's just a myriad of things that all goes through, and we didn't have a good working knowledge of that because of all of our turnover in animal control. I've also met with the police chief about our relations with them. When we get a call out after hours, it's because police has called us. There's an aggressive dog on the scene. I'm arresting somebody and they have a dog with them or whatever it may be. And so we met with the police chief as well to talk about how do we do this better. Wildlife is a big thing. They see an injured deer. We go out there. What do we do? And so we're kind of limited, they're kind of limited, and we're just trying to meet the gap of the common things that we come across. I'm also in regular contact with the state veterinarian. He is a tremendous resource. He's been in the field over 3 decades. He's the one that actually does our annual inspection. He knows our facility better than I did when I first came on. And so I'm in regular contact, emails, phone calls, and in-person meetings with him as well. Okay, to kind of talk about some procedural updates, I mentioned already that the Help Me Get Home notifications go out to all of my staff. That's been hugely beneficial. One of the other things that we've changed is that we're really, at this point, we're only citing for the most egregious violation. So if animal control is called out to a scene and we have a dog that's running loose, and 1, they're at large, that's against the law. 2, they don't have their microchip. 3, they're not spay-neutered. 4, they don't have a current rabies. My goal is compliance. I want you to spay neuter your pet. I want you to microchip your pet. We tried a couple of situations where we actually microchipping in the field. That was too cumbersome for all the things that are on the demand for animal control, but we encourage folks, please come into the facility. A microchip is $13. It's a very easy thing to do. Please come in and do that. So if we were to respond to a scene like that, like we do a dozen times a day, we would write a citation for the dog being at large. That is the most egregious violation. It's a public safety issue that your dog is running at large. Your dog may charge people. Your dog may cause a traffic accident. That is our most concern. Our very close second most concern is that your pet's not current on its rabies vaccination. At the end of the day, we exist to prevent the spread of disease from animals to people. I am the local rabies control authority. You've got to be current on your rabies. That is not a city ordinance. That is not an option. That is a state law required thing. So we're going to follow up with you in 10 days, and we're going to say, hey, did you get your rabies vaccination? Hey, did you get your spay-neuter surgery scheduled? Whatever it may be. And so at that point, you may be subject to additional citations if we've given you that verbal warning and then followed up. But we just want to work with folks. The amount of money that you would be paying to the municipal court, I'd love for you to just spend that on your spay-neuter. So that's one of the biggest changes we've done out in the field. On procedural updates, there are a number of things that we discovered we didn't have a good written format for how we were doing it. This individual would do it this way, this individual would do it that way. Both good things, but let's come together and just have some standardization of it all. So for example, one of the procedural updates that's been before the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee is related to bite cases. Judge Gilbert said to me several times, we've got to talk about bite cases, y'all aren't doing bite cases right. And I said, well, I think we are. Maybe we're just not communicating that. And so we had a bite case happen, and I said, all right, I've got one. What do you want to do? And so we went through it. And so he was saying, you've got to do this, this, this. For example, we have to have sworn statements. We have to have photos of the dog. We have to have photos of the victim. So we were doing a lot of that. We just weren't necessarily communicating that to Judge Gilbert because it does escalate to his level in the event that there were medical bills or veterinary bills or any kind of restitution that can be awarded to the victim. The biggest change that's happened with that is that we've expanded it to handle all animal bites, including animal on animal. So that's not required by state code. So when I talk to my veterinarian, he doesn't have anything to say about that. It's local ordinance. It's something the council has put in place that if my dog bites your cat, that dog should still be quarantined. That person should still be cited. And that's something that had kind of slipped through the cracks because quite honestly, it is confusing in the ordinance. One of the things that Judge Gilbert and Deborah and I are working through is quite frankly, a complete overhaul of the ordinance. It's mainly to clean up language, to clarify, and to give our folks the tools they need to do their job. The ordinance has been piecemealed over time to the extent that you read this section and it says this, and you read this section and it does not say that. And so, admittedly, this was a difficult part to understand, but it is in the ordinance that we are required to investigate those. The next few items, we did have a procedural update going to the ASAC related to cruelty cases. Most commonly in San Angelo, that's going to be unreasonable abandonment. And so we're working through those. We also have an item going before the ASAC next week related to how we're handling wildlife. There was a lot of we learned a lot about wildlife in our basic certification course, and we learned that, again, each officer was kind of doing their own thing. And I think that there's some opportunity for that, but I think it needs to be under some pretty strict guidelines. And so we wanted to talk about, if it's rabies high risk for carrying rabies, we want to handle it one way. If it's low or no risk, we want to handle it another way. And I want to equip my officers to make those judgment calls in the field, but we need a pretty rigorous written statement about what all that is. And so we've worked through that as well. We have a more robust SOP related to wildlife at this time compared to what we've had in the past. So as we continue to work through, we're going to have a constant review for the committee for our procedures as we continue to work through these items. We are going to have ever-present staffing revisions, and whether that means when someone separates, we fill the job that they were in, or we fill it with a part-timer, or we reorg, or whatever it is, there's just always going to be this opportunity for how we're going to fill those staffing levels. The updated code of ordinances, I hope to have that before the ASAC in January so that I can have that before the council in February-ish for its first reading so we can have a really useful document. And also, upcoming maybe some opportunities for expanded public-private partnership. I did want to note that the current agreement we have with Concho Valley Paws was a one-year agreement, so it's up February 28th. And so the request for proposal is going before my board later this month. We hope to have those responses in by December so that we can bring it to y'all for approval in January, a full 30 days before the agreement is actually out. And then facility improvements. I haven't talked much about this, but our building was built in 1999. It has had virtually no improvements. We are not using it as originally designed. I'll admit to you right now, I have a quarantine room called Wildlife. I don't put wildlife in there. I find a solution for wildlife out in the field. I sometimes have overflow adoptable pets in there. Right now I have 19 dogs in my wildlife room. They're little dogs, but still, that's not ideal. That's not what I would like that room to be used for. And because of the no-kill initiative, there are days that we're busting at the seams, like, where can we put these cats? Where can we put these dogs? Let's have some solutions that maybe we wouldn't think of before, but we've got to do it. And so that's kind of a constant thing. We have an ebb and flow of, we're kind of Monday, last week, we had 230 lives in the facility. And it felt easy. We were like, okay, this is about what we can handle, right? By Friday morning, before we even opened, we had 299. So, and then it was a busy day. And so Friday, we were swamped. Friday, we were hustling. We were busy. One family brought in 25 animals, 25 dogs from one family. They approached their mother, who was going into a skilled nursing facility. She couldn't take her pets with her, and they had a hoarding situation that they were unaware of. And so that's when folks like me step in, and we assist. We try to match those dogs with adoptable homes if they're adoptable, and we try to just take in and help that family out. They were very grateful for our care, but where do we put these dogs? So that's just a constant thing that we're working through as we're limited by our facility. And that's all I really have for y'all. I know I talked a lot. That's all, just a little bit. But, you know,
What are you doing in your spare time, Morgan?
I think it's an optimistic time for animal services. I'm getting a lot of good feedback for key things that we're taking on. We're hungry for that feedback for additional things that we continue reviewing, and we're doing it, y'all. I mean, we're the feedback that we get, if there's something that we need to take a note and make a change, we're looking at it. Are we allowed to legally? Are we capable of it with our resources? And to the extent that we're not, we're communicating with that with our chain of command. So I appreciate y'all's time.
Morgan, you know very well, working in that particular position, that people are very passionate about their pets. I will have to say, I've had less phone calls from people, from citizens, about pets in the last 4 months than I did in the first 12 months that I was on council. So I do appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the work that you're doing with the people around you too. So thank you.
Amen to that, Morgan.
Morgan, it sounds like you have a pretty solid relationship with Concho Valley Paws. Are there other rescue groups in San Angelo that you're working with as well?
Yes, ma'am. So Concho Valley Paws is our main point of contact for adoptions. It's important to us to have one point of contact so that we can walk away from it and so that it's an organized effort. For example, if Concho Valley Paws has a pet that they're medicating because they're about to send on a transport and had a very treatable illness, then they need to know that that's going to be theirs to transport because they've invested funds in it. And so they're lead on it, and they're who I work with. But they do work with other rescues in town, mostly purebred rescues. So Texas Cattle Dog Rescue has a foothold here, and they're regularly pulling from us. Diamond Dachshund Rescue is often pulling from us. We have a dog slated to go to Great Pyrenees Rescue, and so it is more often the purebred rescues, but they do have a function in place for other groups to come in and pull because we are wide open for that. Yes, ma'am.
I just have to say, wow, very thorough and very detailed. Love it. And I don't know if you caught yourself intentionally, and I know it tells me where your heart's at, but when you were talking about your facility, you said home. You had so many in your home. And that just tells me exactly what your intentions are, where's your heart at, and how well of a job you have been doing. So thank you, Morgan.
Well, thank you. I do. I call it the house.
Morgan, I'll follow. I went and did the walkthrough with you. It's outstanding what you do, and there's no doubt in my mind. And like Carrie said, when I stepped in, it was just as the transition was going. Daniel made a great job with putting you in the place. I mean, we have the person to drive and steer that ship that needs to be there. One thing we talked about, and I encourage you to bring this to council later, is the need for improvements to your building and maybe an additional building out there. And we'll go talk to Roland about some acreage up there because you need a wellness showroom. A wellness showroom does great for, placing pets and animals, and we all care about that. So let's put that one. It's not something new, but let's not leave that one on the back burner too long.
Yes, sir. I think one of the biggest successes we've had with an investment in my facility is later on your agenda related to budget carryovers. We were tremendously under budget last year because of these salary vacancies, and to the extent we can start matching that to the facility, I know better than a lot of people the limitations y'all face during budget cycle, and so to the extent I can find my own solutions, that can add up to tens of thousands of dollars, and so that'll help, and we're going to keep plugging away on that as well, sir.
Thank you, Morgan.
Morgan, very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council?
Give her a break.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank y'all.
Good job.
Thank you for that update. Item G, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 12, Planning and Development, Exhibit C, Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Section 4, Variances, and Chapter 5, Procedural Requirements for Processing Subdivisions, Section 3, Stages of Development Review to prevent inconsistencies in the code. City Attorney Teresa James.
This is one of those cleanup ordinances. As we've been working through some of the planning ordinances, we realized that there was this term simple majority included in some of the ordinances. We've always interpreted it to be just majority. However, when you research the term simple majority, there are a number of ways it is used and can be interpreted that could cause conflicts in the future. So all this does is delete the term simple, so we have a majority and supermajority in our development code and removes all of that ambiguity.
Move approval.
Any public comment?
Need a majority on that or a simple majority?
If no public comment, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you, Teresa.
40, Teresa.
Item H, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 12, Planning and Development, Article 12.044, signs to require council approval of certain signs that extend into public right-of-way. Presentation by Planning and Development Services, John James.
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is kind of a cleanup ordinance as well. I just have the definition here of projecting sign in case we need to talk more about that, but it's basically a sign that attaches typically vertically out from a building. Our current regulation says that all projecting signs larger than 16 square feet require city council approval. We think the intent of that was for areas like the downtown where you might have a marquee sign or a projecting sign that actually extends out into the public right-of-way. But the way the ordinance is worded, it requires your approval for any projecting sign. And so we think that a projecting sign that's completely on private property on a building that may be 20 or 30 feet back from the property line, they should be able to have a projecting sign just like any other sign on their property without having to come to the city council. Again, we think that was the intent of this ordinance when it was written. It just didn't include that particular language. So this would simply change this requirement that says city council approval is only required when a projecting sign does extend across the property line into the public right-of-way. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, just a very minor change. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve as presented. Got a motion and a second. Any public comment? If none, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? 6-0. Thank you, John. Item I, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Appendix A, Article A8.000, utility-related fees, A8.008, water, sewer, and trash deposits by amending the deposits. Presentation by Allison Struby.
Morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Mr. Valenzuela. So this ordinance in front of you is one of 4 ordinances that was taken to the Water Advisory Board on October 16th. This is an ordinance that was adopted in 2005 and has not been updated since, and so we're trying to make sure that all of our fees and deposits, the rate structure outside of the regular billing system, are also being updated as they should. Here are the current deposits that are being charged. They are broken down by meter size as well as residential and commercial. I do want to add that while some of these in this section are very large dollar amounts, those are also very few and far between of those size service connections. 82% of our meter sizes are in that 5/8 inch category. So the bulk of our accounts that are being set up are in the 5/8 inch category. So I want to talk about one reason why we want to increase the deposits. As it states in your background, we send about 1,500 accounts, approximately $470,000 annually into collections. And with a good deposit system, we hope to minimize the amount that we're sending to collections. It'll take a while for that to go into place if these increases are updated, but we hope that it does have an impact in our collections. One thing I do want to make sure that it's mentioned, that this will not affect our current customers. We have approximately 35,000 customers currently, and this does not affect them. This would affect new customers coming in to set up services, and with the ordinance change, we've set that date to be January 1, and so that's when those rates would go into effect. I'm going to get into how we arrived at these proposed deposits, but most notably, I think the one that we really want to look at, and I'll go into detail, is the residential deposit in the 5/8 inch category. We're proposing a $100 deposit. It is currently $35. Okay, so real quick, what we've done is we've come up with an average 1 month bill for water, sewer, trash, and stormwater, and what that bill would look like. So what we'd like to do is to increase the deposit amount to at least cover an average 1 month bill of usage. So you've got the water base fee, the sewer base fee, the trash fee, an average stormwater bill, and we are basing the consumption on approximately 4,000 gallons. Reminder, this is for the residential side of the deposits. So those come together at $96.47, and so we've rounded that up to $100. So you can see, going through all the different meter sizes, how we've arrived at these calculations. Are there any questions before I go on?
Allison, I just want to ask you, and I don't know if this is the right time to ask or not, but when you're going to be assessing this fee, are you going to take anything into consideration, like, say, for instance, the customer comes in, he's got good credit, he doesn't need, I mean, you feel like there may not be a deposit made?
We currently do not have a system in place where we can check people's credit history. That would be something we'd have to either become a part of by it's a software package, and we'd have to buy that to be able to check people's credit. What we do have is if they were an existing customer, say they lived in San Angelo for a little while and they moved off for some reason, then they came back, we can look at those people, the history that they have within our utility. If they were a good paying customer, then we would most likely not require this deposit or that amount of a deposit. So we do look at their history in terms of what's in our system, but we do not have a way to currently check people's credit history.
Say if they were from Sweetwater, you would not be able to check their history?
No, ma'am.
To determine.
One thing that I do want to say is that we keep this deposit for 4 years. If they have a good payment history during those 4 years, it is credited back to their account, or if they close their account, within that time, it's applied to their last bill. And if the deposit is more than their last bill, then they receive a check for that difference. And so that's how we do that.
So I've got a question, Allison. For the $100 deposit, is there a certain amount of time that needs to lapse if they're looking like they're a good paying customer and that they're not going to be, skipping out? Will that $100 be applied sooner than their last bill if they?
The 4-year mark.
4-year mark?
Yes,
okay.
4 years.
And also, customers say they're moving from San Antonio, and they're moving in, and they've had good history there, is there a way to check that to where they wouldn't have to be paying $100?
We don't have the means in place to check that type of
That go
history
with that
with a different
software.
utility customer.
Allison, before you get off, just real quick, do we have the ability in our history of those uncollectibles, those that are going out, that we know that they are a certain range of time that they typically are on our system? In other words, we've got those uncollectibles. One of the things we're trying to do is propose that we make this this rate such that if somebody decides to leave, it's to their advantage to go ahead and try to resolve the situation without just leaving. $35 is a drop in a bucket with somebody, but $100 makes a difference to someone. So this is kind of the background, the reasoning behind us moving this direction. Is that correct?
I think I understand your question, but I don't know that putting $100, because it would ultimately, whether it's $35 or $100, it would go towards their final bill. One way to look at that is, though, if their final bill would be less with this proposal, and so they may be more apt to pay that final bill. If it is the difference of $65 more, maybe they don't have the funds. A lot of people that we're sending to collections are not paying their bill, so we have to close their service and final out them and move them into collections because they are not a good paying customer. And so this would be more money for the utility, less into collections, so it would benefit the customer in that a lesser dollar figure is going to the collection agency, I guess.
You answered my question, even
Okay.
though it was
Sorry.
roundabout. I mean,
Went around in circles for a second.
In the long run, what this does is it makes the rest of the citizens whole. They're not supporting water utilities with either sales tax or property tax, because now what you've got is you guys are moving and doing what you need to do. Yeah. Okay.
To add to what Harry said as well, this is not an effort to generate revenue.
Correct.
This is to mitigate losses that are having to go to collections at this point.
So are the losses, maybe a question, the losses are coming because people are not paying their last bill? Is that where the huge amount is generated?
Yes,
so
sir.
this is attempting, and as you said, this isn't going to be an immediate effect. It's going to take a while.
Yes, so we set up approximately 6,000 accounts annually. There's no way to say those 6,000 are going to final out their bill that first year. So it's going to take some time so that we get all those customers established with this new deposit before we probably see that change in the amount going to collections.
Yes.
Allison, are these people going to have to, they come up with the deposit right there and then, or are they going to be able to pay it out, or how's that going to work? Like, do they have to come up and say, here's my $100, now I want your service? Or can they pay $50 every month?
No, at the time of setting up the service, it is required for the full amount.
And also, how much is the software to find out their credit?
I'm not sure how much that would cost.
Because I wouldn't want to have to pay a $100 deposit if I had good credit. It's like the electric. Whenever they look at your credit, and then if you don't have good credit, then they charge you so much money. So I'm just saying that.
That's something that we can look into in addition to these, is look at what that software package costs and what kind of training you have to have for that to look at people's credit history and stuff like that.
We would be on solid ground to have that software to check someone's credit history. Is that an accurate statement? We could do, Teresa, can we do that?
I would have to look at it in more detail. Typically, whenever you're checking somebody's credit, there are requirements on the confidentiality of that and the uses that you can use it for. But setting up a utility account, I don't know off the top of my head of any reason why it would be prohibited for that purpose.
Are there any circumstances to where we can work with people if they can't, like Lucy said, come up with $100 right then and there? Can they pay it out over the course of the first 2 months, since $50 is a little bit better than $100 right up front?
I'll ask our customer service manager, I wasn't prepped to, I guess, answer that question, how she does handle those cases. $35 is probably a lot easier to come up with in that first month than $100. But I can talk to her and see what kind of, what we can do to change that.
This is the first reading, so we can do it by the second.
Allison, would you give me that figure again, how much we have going to collections?
It's approximately 1,500 customers a year, and that amount totaling, on average, $470,000 annually going to collections.
And you're
so
saying,
close to $500,000.
So you're saying that most of this, or all of it's due to people skipping out on their final bill, not paying their final bill?
Yes, it is for the most part those that are not paying their final bill, and that is when they go to the collections agency.
Okay.
But also people who aren't paying get shut off, so it becomes their final bill.
Yes.
So it's a little of both.
Correct.
If you don't pay for a long enough period of time, you get shut off, and those last bills become your last bills.
Because you may move on somewhere else or get water under somebody else's name. So who ends up paying for that almost $500,000? The taxpayer?
It's a decrease in revenue that the utility is not receiving. I don't know how that.
The rest of the ratepayers bear
The
that
rest,
burden.
the rest of the ratepayers
Yes.
are paying for that. The other 35,000 customers,
We
in
do,
my mind, are the ones
yeah,
paying
because we
for
do
it.
projections on our budget, and when those budgets come out short, guess what? We start looking at our rate fees as well, and having to make adjustments in the future just to make up for those losses. So, again, it is the other ratepayers. That's not fair. We want to make sure that those that receive this service, we've already registered a revenue because we do it by accrual basis. We want to make sure we collect on that revenue. So, again, we don't want to pass that on to anyone else.
It's something I think for us to think about. When we look at $65 increase in our deposit versus all of our citizens having to chip in to pay almost $500,000 for people that, don't honor their obligations.
Yes.
I don't know. That's something that I think we need to seriously consider before the second reading of this.
Council comment?
Real quick, I'm going to go through the rest of the slides real fast. So basically the same philosophy with the commercial sizes, but we have used a different usage for the 5/8 inch at 10,000 gallon monthly usage, an inch and a half at 25,000 gallons, and a 2-inch meter using approximately 50,000 gallons. Same thing with commercial meter sizes and all these very large meters using approximately 50,000 gallons monthly.
Allison, excuse me. Earlier I was focusing on the 5/8 inch meter, but when we look at our commercial customers, do we have a lot of them that end up not honoring their obligation to pay their bills?
I will be bringing that data to us when we talk about the late fees, or I do have, it's not a correlation in what's in collections, but 5% of our late paying customers are commercial, so it's most of our, if we say that the late paying customers that ultimately go into collections, if we're using that data, it's about 5%. Okay.
So does that 5% justify us raising their deposits as much as we have?
Well, this is approximately 1 month worth of usage. I think this for some of our larger industries, and I want to remind that the 4, 6, and 8-inch categories are, since I've been here, we've not put in a 4 or 6-inch for any new commercial entity. So this type of deposit hasn't been required since I've been here. So, and it is $900, but they are going to be paying, if we consider how much their monthly bill would be, $900 isn't out of the ballpark for that customer's usage and what their monthly bill would look like.
I think we got to remember that even though this is a low percentage, that any one of these that has to go to collections, this amount covers approximately 1 month of their bill. The other thing is for those good-paying customers, in 4 years, that money can be applied back to their monthly bill, or it could be given back to them return the deposit. So I really think that this just makes good business sense. I think it's going to be tough for some of the small business people, maybe, but they're not going to be in these categories of 3, 4, 6, 8-inch lines. They're going to be back down in that 3/8-inch line or 1-inch line, most of them. So it's not going to be these large people like this.
So once again, here's the side-by-side comparison of the current versus the proposed, so you can see what those increases look like. So we recommend increasing deposits to lower collections, reduce loss of collected revenue, and help ensure total amounts owed to the utility are collected. Once again, this was taken to the Water Advisory Board. I know that Mike Boyd, he was here. Okay, he left for a second. They approved this unanimously on October 16th, and so I'll be happy to answer any other questions that y'all may have regarding this.
Speak to a couple of the industries that would be using that 8-inch line. What are we looking at? What type of business?
Currently, I believe our only 8-inch connection is Goodfellow Air Force Base, so it would be something of that magnitude. Okay. So.
Good morning, Mike Boyd. Sorry I had to step out for ribbon cutting, groundbreaking. We vetted this fairly significantly. We had most of the members of the board, Water Advisory Board there. When I look at it from a finance perspective, and I look at it overall as a city perspective and where we are on revenue, a lot of people don't pay that final bill. And when you look at the breakout of how many days it's gone past due, 30 all the way up to a year, we carry several $1 million worth of revenue on our books where people have not paid. And I think this is an opportunity. When I talk to a couple of other cities, I hate to say it's a deterrence, but it is in a way to make sure that people pay for the service that's provided. And so we only looked at the deposits, and you'll see in the future meeting we'll talk about some other ways to enhance revenue. It's not in order to, it's there to cover cost of the city that y'all incur and that y'all are fiscally responsible for. The bad news is we haven't done it in a long time, and we should be doing it periodically. But I think it's a charge for the Water Advisory Board, like the council, to at least cover your cost and try and collect whatever revenue source that are owed to you. And so that's the primary reason that the Water Advisory Board made the recommendation unanimously to bring to City Council to ask for your approval. Questions?
Move to approve as presented.
I second the motion.
Heard. Any public comment? If not, then I will call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Item J, consider a resolution adopting a design manual for the installation and construction.
Oh, can I say one thing real quick before we go? Bill Riley, is tomorrow your last day? Oh, it isn't? I'm so sorry. I'm already saying goodbye. For your services earlier.
Just trying to get rid of you.
Sorry,
Ricky loves you. Ricky loves you, Bill.
I think it's, when is his date, last day? December 8th? See, I was just a month ahead of time.
Had the day right.
Christmas list.
Had the day right, wrong month.
Item J, consider a resolution adopting a design manual for the installation and construction of network nodes and node support poles in the public right-of-way. Presentation by City Engineer Russell Pell.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Russell.
All right.
Congratulations on your 20 under 40.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just to give everybody kind of a brief overview of what we'll be talking about today is just the design manual for, like Lane said, for the wireless communication facilities, and what will be included with our design manual is an actual permit application and the requirements and the supplemental requirements needed for that application, not only for existing poles but for new poles, placement within the right-of-way and those restrictions, as well as additional requirements including signage and height requirements. The permit application is pretty generic. It's, just asks for the owner or the network provider's information and the contractor's information, the job site, where they're going to be working, the type of work they're going to be doing. And then not only will the engineering department be reviewing this application, but we'll also be coordinating our review with our planning department just to make sure that, if we're placing anything in commercial, residential, or historic areas, that the planning department is included with that review as well. Going into some of the supplemental information, attaching to existing poles within the right-of-way, we have a stipulation in there that not more than 5 network nodes can be placed on any pole within the right-of-way. And just to remind everybody what a network node is, it's just the radio transceivers, antennas, and any backup power supplies. We also are requiring that structural analysis be performed on each of the existing poles to make sure that not only that the pole can handle the additional load of the antennas and or just the network nodes, that any wind loads that are anticipated for the area, that it doesn't fall over with these new attachments. We'll also be requiring that the provider do an analysis on the radio frequencies that they're proposing, that they're not interfering with city public safety radio systems, traffic signal lighting systems, or any other communication components that the city might have. One thing we'll be looking at is handicap accessibility requirements, making sure that we don't have any jut outs that are in conflict with handicap accessibility issues along sidewalks, or any other areas that might be an issue. We'll also be looking at the color of the network nodes. We're asking that they color them to camouflage or to mirror the pole that they're affixing to, so that way they don't stand out and just another eyesore in the public right-of-way. Electric meters, each of these network nodes are going to require power. We'd ask that they either, place, that they don't place a new structure in the right-of-way just for their meter. So we're requiring that they affix them to the pole that they're going to affix to as well. Installation of new poles. They, basically have a lot of the same requirements as the existing pole, but I'm just going to kind of briefly go over, the differences. One of the main things we want them to make sure is that, that they provide what material type they're going to be installing the poles as, or, is it going to be a wood pole, metal pole, fiberglass, things of that nature. One thing that we want them to look at is, within that area that they're going to propose the new poles, are there primarily wooden poles in that area, or are there metal poles? And if there's, we want them to match into the air so that they blend in again. And, if there's mixed use, we want them to defer to a metal pole. One thing we'll also be looking at is, or making sure that they look at is, the existing utilities that are in that area, not just above ground, but underground. We're going to make them, locate the water mains, sewer mains, gas mains, so that they're not going in and putting in a pole, and drilling right through the middle of one of our water mains. Also, that the placement of that pole, needs to be within, we're asking that they place it, typically on the edge of the right-of-way line. But in scenarios where that can't happen, we don't want them to be any closer than 24 inches of the back of curb. And the main reason for that stipulation, too, is when we're doing our street improvement projects, that, when we go and rip up the street or the curb and gutter, that we're not also in conflict with that new pole. Some more supplemental information that requires not only to existing but also proposed poles is, we're looking at, is this in a park, in a historic area? And basically, we're not going to allow that without city council approval. And this not only applies to our existing parks and historic districts, but any future parks and historic districts that the city may adopt. We'll also be looking at residential areas. If it's going to be in a residential area, we're going to ask that they place the pole or the existing pole be in the alley. That way it's not in front of somebody's home. It's in the alley with, primarily in San Angelo, if we have any utility lines, it's going to be in the alley. So we want to just maintain that. As well as we want the network provider to look at, and, as they're bringing in more and more of these, it's not just going to be, AT&T or Sprint, as more of these providers come into the area, we want them to look at, what other network facilities are in that area before they put that there. We don't want to have, an abundance of nodes in one block, basically. And so what the stipulation here of having another, 300 feet between wireless communication facilities is just, just trying to keep it sparse and, not having a whole bunch of these in one area. Some additional requirements that we've put in our design manual are signage. What we want, some very minimal signage on the pole indicating the name of the provider, their address, and emergency contact information should we need to contact them in case somebody hits the pole and knocks it over into the right-of-way, or if we, just keep that communication open. The one thing, too, that we don't want to have, though, is we don't want to have too much signage such that they're advertising and things of that nature, just like anything else, like a garage sale. We don't typically allow signage on, or that type of signage in the right-of-way. One thing we added, too, was no additional overhead electric lines. Like I said before, most of these are going to be requiring electrical power, and, we don't want to add more overhead electric lines in our right-of-way. So if we can prevent that by, requiring them to put it underground and run it to their new pole, then it just keeps everything clean and, just gives it a much neater appearance. But finally, the height requirements. The local government code, chapter 284, puts the general stipulation on the height requirements, basically stipulating a maximum of 55 feet above ground, but each pole cannot be greater than 10 feet of the existing poles that are in the area. So if there's a 30-foot pole in the area, or that's kind of the average of the area, the new wireless communication, the new wireless communication facility can only be 10 foot higher than that, so it would limit it to 40 feet.
Russell.
All right. Any questions?
Is the reason yes. Is the reason that we need to adopt a resolution, is that because we don't have a city ordinance that would cover the things that you've just laid out here?
Well, so what I brought to you last meeting was an ordinance that stipulated basically the fees and that they could place, these types of facilities in the right-of-way, and then that ordinance also referred to a design manual to give more stipulation as to, how that has to happen and how we're going to approve it. So you're correct. We do not have as of today, we now have an ordinance. The second reading was a part of consent to that, and so this is just to piggyback onto that ordinance, just to reinforce that ordinance. So, and maybe Teresa can explain that better than I can, but just in general terms, this is just giving us more flexibility and more, to be able to
control the aesthetics, basically, to make sure that we
control the aesthetics. Thank you.
Yeah. And who's developing the design manual?
Who's developing it? Well, staff,
Okay,
myself.
so the city
and
staff.
Yes, and legal staff. We worked together to put this together. we just didn't come up with this,
Willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly, thank you. So, City of Arlington was a good example that we used. City of Lubbock also has this in place already, as well as City of Houston, and those were the types of examples that we followed to implement ours, to make it more curtailed to the City of San Angelo, and, it's.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Any public comment?
Hi, I'm Chris Juro. I'm just wondering, there are several residential areas that have no alleyways in San Angelo, so you're effectively telling them that they cannot place nodes to service these areas? Because you had it in there, it stipulated it had to be in an alleyway.
There are some areas, and it's not like one of these has to be placed on every block. And basically what these are doing is or in my limited knowledge of what these actually do, is they take, we have a macro tower, you see the large cell phone towers across town, and what these do is they just basically, it's a repeater just to increase that coverage area. It's a booster, more or less. And, so what they typically look at, or, in discussions with these wireless communication facilities or network providers, is that, they're just trying to increase those high traffic areas. And we have been looking at these already, and, our higher traffic areas are, more towards this, as far as data usage, are more towards our center of town, and they've been looking at, downtown, and more of our industrial type areas so far. While, there are other ways, it's not their first rodeo. They know how to make these work more efficiently. And, if there's not an alley in that area, we feel like it's still there's some other viable options out there in the right of way.
Russell, didn't you tell us that it could be behind the curb, but it had to be 24 inches behind the curb?
Correct, like in a commercial area.
Yeah, so
industrial
you wouldn't
area.
have to have an alleyway if it could be placed 24 inches behind the curb someplace. Or did I miss something?
Well, also keep in mind that these nodes will be going in other areas that do have alleyways. They'll be within the vicinity of areas that don't have alleyways. So the boosters will assist in those areas, I'm sure, as well. So, right. But I know that what you were talking about was more the commercial, right?
Correct. Those were more commercial areas where it'd be behind the curb or industrial areas.
Any other public comment? And I'll call for the vote. Got a motion by Tommy and Harry.
Mm-hmm. Second by Lucy, I think.
Second by Lucy? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Russell, before you leave, congratulations on 20 under 40 selection.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good job.
Dilly dilly, right? Dilly dilly.
Dilly dilly.
Yeah.
Item K.
Oh, my.
First public hearing and introduction
This must be a pretty tough presentation. Tina's brought help.
She's got her backups.
That's right.
First public hearing and introduction of an ordinance amending the 2017 to 2018 budget for, number 1, grants and capital projects, and number 2, staffing levels. Presentation by Finance Director Tina Diersky.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Mr. Valenzuela. I have for you today a budget amendment. First off, we are budgeting revenue in the amount of $415,000. That revenue does come from the Medicaid supplement program that Chief Dunn applies for. It's not a guaranteed revenue source, but when we do receive it, we try to use it to help out the fire department. So we're going to budget $415,000 in revenue, and the expense will be related to the peak hours ambulance that Chief Dunn has implemented, a VPN for their software and their vehicles, fire station number 4, and also the fire training center. We're also budgeting both revenue and expense for police SWAT grant. of $26,500. And then we have our carryover process, which we do every year after year end, where departments have projects that are either in progress or that are anticipated. So they request to carry over funds that were unused last year into the new year to use for those projects. I know that $12 million looks like a very large figure, but $10.7 million of that is for related to water infrastructure projects for the Bell Street project. Another $1 million of it is for a fire truck, and the remaining $300,000 is for various other projects such as City Hall grounds and the animal shelter that we mentioned earlier. So that's all I have on the budget amendment. Do you have any questions? Okay, moving on. Oh, let me move on to part two, or how do we do that, Brian? All at once?
We need to take two different.
Okay. The second part is just the reallocation of the FTE to remove that third assistant police chief and just to convert it to a regular police officer position. And that's all I have. So.
Council questions? Have a motion?
I move to approve.
Second. Any public comment?
You know, all that support for nothing.
I think it worked.
It worked.
No public comment. I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0. Thank you, Tina. Puts us into closed session, and under executive session, under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government, Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings to be open under the following sections. Section A, Section 551.071, 1A, consult with the attorney when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney about pending or contemplated litigation regarding, number 1, 2013 seal coating program contract, number 2, Templeton Construction Incorporated, number 3, Alsay Incorporated versus City of San Angelo, Carollo Engineers. Item B, Section 551.0741, to deliberate the annual evaluation of the city manager. Item C, Section 551.072, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property related to the Avenue P drainage project.
And we're estimating about an hour and a half, but if we get done early, we don't want to set that in stone. If it might be an hour to an hour and a half, so we didn't want to give an exact time because it's kind of approximate.
Do we have anybody here waiting on the appointments?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
10:43, we're going into closed session. Following up on administrative issues, Section A, consider items discussed in executive session if needed, and there are some needed. We'll start with Harry.
Concerning the 2013 seal coating project, we authorized the city manager to negotiate and execute a full release and settlement agreement with Brannon Paving for the settlement of all claims related to the ES 0313 seal coating contract in an amount paid to the city of no less than $400,000. Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 6-0. And on to Billy.
All right. In conjunction to Alsay Incorporated versus the City of San Angelo, first I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a change order to WU-08-13 Wellfield Expansion Package Number 1 to Alsay Incorporated for the total payments not to exceed $100,000 over the awarded bid amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0.
All right, in conjunction with same Alsay versus City of San Angelo, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute settlement agreements for the settlement of all claims related to Alsay. Incorporated in an amount not to exceed the amended contract price.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0. And back to Harry.
Yes. In the matter of acquiring property for the Avenue P project, make a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute the purchase of 1805 and 1806 Harbor Court in San Angelo, Texas, in conjunction with the Avenue P drainage project for an amount not to exceed $600,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0. On to consider approving the following board nominations. Planning Commission, Joe Spano, SMD 6, to first full term ending January 2020, and the Tiers Board, Tony Hunter, SMD 5, to an unexpired term ending July 2019.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0. And on to any announcements and considerations of future agenda items. I'll start with Mr. Tommy this time.
Good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Nothing.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.